red buggy moved along a narrow trail through the trees, then powered up a steep dirt hill. But near the top, it lost momentum, reared up, flipped backwards several times, and slid all the way down to the bottom of the slope. The pink and green buggy powered hard up the steep dirt slope, but after losing balance, it tipped over and tumbled repeatedly down the hillside, rolling over again and again through a cloud of dust before finally coming to a stop upside down. The black and orange buggy, adorned with an American flag, accelerated rapidly and spun around abruptly. However, due to its immense inertia, the vehicle suddenly flipped over and landed upside down on the flat ground. The red buggy made it through the rough turn and climbed onto a steep boulder slope. But when the front wheels rose up and got stuck in a large rock crevice, the vehicle lost balance, flipped over backward, and landed upside down on the rocks below. The white and gray frame buggy tried to accelerate up the dirt slope in the forest, but just before reaching the top, it lost momentum. The front wheels lifted off the ground and the vehicle flipped backward in a full rollover, ending up upside down on the hillside. The orange and black buggy charged hard up from the valley onto a forest slope covered with dry leaves. But while trying to get over a steep dirt ledge, the vehicle lost balance, rolled onto its side between the tree stumps, and then tumbled several more times down the slope. The dark blue buggy plunged down a steep slope into a deep ditch, then bounced back up the slope, losing balance, flipping over and sliding upside down. The black and orange buggy made it through the rough, muddy incline, but while trying to crawl over a large rock at the top of the hill, it lost balance and flipped backward onto its roof. The blue and white buggy accelerated hard up the steep rock face. But just before reaching the top, the front wheels suddenly lost traction, the vehicle stalled, then flipped backward and rolled several times down to the bottom of the slope, ending up upside down. The orange and black buggy charged hard up a dirt slope mixed with large rocks. But while trying to push over the steep section near the top, the front wheels were suddenly thrown into the air, the vehicle lost control, and it flipped onto its roof, coming to rest right at the edge of the rocky drop. The blue frame Polaris RZR accelerated straight up the steep rock face. But just as it reached the top, the front wheels lost balance, causing the vehicle to flip backward and crash down into the dirt pit below in a thick cloud of dust. The blue buggy powered hard up the rough, rocky slope, but while trying to charge higher, it lost balance, flipped backward in a full roll, and then landed back on all four wheels. The black buggy crossed the dirt trench and powered up the rocky slope, but just as it was about to reach the top, the vehicle was suddenly thrown upward, slammed its nose hard into the rock face, and then slid backward upside down into the deep pit below. The gray buggy with green rims accelerated hard to climb the rough rocky slope. However, just before reaching the top, it suddenly lost momentum, came to a momentary stop, and then rolled back down the hillside. The buggy accelerated hard to climb the stepped rock face, but just as it reached the top, the front end shot straight up, the vehicle flipped completely backward in midair and then landed upside down on the rocky ground. The blue buggy accelerated at full power from the bottom of the hill. As it charged straight up the vertical rock face, the massive momentum launched the vehicle high into the air, sending it into 2 consecutive flips. The blue buggy powered straight up the steep rock face, but just before reaching the top, it lost balance, flipped backward in a full rollover, and fell straight down onto the rocky ground. The gray buggy tried to power over the rough rock face, but as soon as the front wheels climbed onto the high rock ledge, the vehicle lost its balance and flipped onto its roof. The silver aluminum frame buggy tried hard to power up the slippery sandy slope near the edge of the forest, but when the rear wheels lost traction as it attempted to climb the higher ledge, the vehicle flipped backward in a full rollover and came to rest upside down on the hillside. The red buggy made it over the gentle dirt ledge and started descending the brush-covered hillside. But because the slope angle was so steep, the vehicle lost balance and rolled over 3 times down the hill before finally coming to rest upside down in the open area below. The buggy accelerated hard up the rough dirt slope. However, as soon as it reached the top, it suddenly lost balance and flipped backward right on the hillside. The silver white steel frame rock bouncer hit the throttle hard in an attempt to conquer the steep, treacherous boulder-covered slope in the forest, but it lost balance, flipped backward in a full rollover, and ended up upside down. The gray buggy with an American flag was powering up the slippery boulder slope, but because the right side wheels climbed too high against the steep rock face, the vehicle lost its center of gravity, tipped over to the left, and ended up upside down at the bottom of the slope. The buggy with red revenge decals blasted through the muddy pit and charged straight up the dirt embankment. The vehicle immediately flipped backward, rolled down, and ended up upside down right in the creek bed. The gray and green rock bouncer was climbing a rough boulder-covered rock face, but just as the front wheels climbed onto a large rock ledge, the vehicle suddenly lost momentum. The wheels slipped and it flipped backward onto its roof right in the rocky gap. The gray buggy roared as it powered up the steep dirt wall, but it suddenly reared straight up, flipped backward onto its roof, and came to rest neatly in the muddy trench below. The buggy accelerated hard to climb the steep embankment, but after losing balance at the top, the front end shot straight up and the vehicle flipped backward, coming to rest, propped against the dirt wall in an upside-down position. The orange and black buggy accelerated hard up the steep sand hill, but it lost momentum and flipped backward down the slope. Fortunately, it managed to roll back onto all 4 wheels. The blue buggy charged at full speed up the steep sandhill, but when it reached the top, the strong momentum launched it into the air, sending it tumbling repeatedly all the way down to the bottom of the slope. The purple buggy accelerated and hurtled straight up the steep cliff, launching itself high into the air before losing traction and spinning around, breaking off one of its front wheels in the process. The blue buggy raced up the slope at high speed but suddenly struck a barrier, flipped onto its roof, and began pouring out thick white smoke. It then continued sliding down the slope. The gray buggy powered hard up the concrete barricaded slope, but it suddenly lost traction and began pouring out thick white smoke. Because it lost momentum at the steep angle, the vehicle flipped backward onto its roof and came to a stop motionless on the hillside. The rock bouncer sped out of the muddy ditch and hurtled up the slope, but as soon as it hit the rocky ledge above, the front of the bike shot straight up, causing it to flip completely upside down and roll back down the slope. The red-framed, white-bodied off-road vehicle was climbing a rough, rocky slope when its right wheel suddenly struck a large rock, causing the vehicle to overturn and land on the rocky hillside. The green rock bouncer accelerated hard up the steep dirt embankment, but because the slope was too steep, it quickly lost balance and eventually ended up upside down, leaning against the dirt wall at the bottom of the hill. The red and black UTV revved up and tried to climb a narrow dirt slope surrounded by trees, but it suddenly lost momentum, slid backward, and rolled over twice down the steep hillside before ending up upside down. The orange and gray rock bouncer charged straight up a steep boulder-covered rock face, but the slope was too steep, causing it to lose momentum, slide back down, and come to rest at the bottom of the hill. The green buggy accelerated up the steep, rocky slope, but just before reaching the top, it lost momentum, tumbled backwards several times down the hillside, and came to rest upside down at the bottom. The jet black buggy charged up the steep dirt slope, its tires losing traction and kicking up a thick cloud of dust. Unable to make it over the top, the vehicle slid backward, flipped 1.5 times midway down, and ended with an upside-down crash at the bottom of the hill. The rock bouncer roared at full throttle and charged straight up the tall, rocky slope. But with so much momentum at the crest, it launched high into the air, flipped more than twice down the face of the hill, trailed blue smoke, and finally came to rest on its side. The blue rock bouncer charged straight up the steep slope through a thick cloud of dust, but it suddenly lost traction, launched into the air, and flipped backward once before crashing back down to the ground. The blue, white, and red rock bouncer flying an American flag was slowly crawling down a dirt slope when the rear suddenly kicked up, sending the vehicle onto its roof with all 4 wheels in the air. The green buggy charged into a rough, slanted trench, its tires spinning hard and throwing dirt and rocks everywhere. But while trying to climb over the high embankment, it suddenly lost its center of gravity, rolled over to the right, and came to rest on its side in the bushes. The red and purple buggy accelerated up the winding dirt slope in the forest, but as it turned onto a raised section covered with grass and brush, the vehicle tipped heavily and ended up upside down right beside the red flag. The buggy accelerated hard up the steep dirt wall. It suddenly reared straight up, flipped backward in a full rollover, and ended up upside down. The silver buggy accelerated through the turn and climbed up a sloped dirt embankment, but as it tried to get over the higher ledge, it lost balance, flipped backward 1.5 times, and ended up upside down at the bottom of the slope. The rock bouncer was descending a winding red dirt slope through a sparse forest, but after losing control while rounding a turn close to a large tree stump, one of the wheels got caught, causing the vehicle to rear up and come to rest on its side in the trench. The gray buggy roared to life and charged hard up the steep slope, but just before reaching the top, it lost momentum and flipped backward twice, tumbling all the way down to the bottom of the hill in a thick cloud of dust. The bright red buggy roared as it accelerated up the rough red dirt hillside. But while trying to clear a vertical dirt wall near the top, it suddenly lost traction, reared up, flipped backward in a full rollover, and came to rest on its side along the slope. The black buggy roared as it accelerated up the rough, slanted dirt hill. But while trying to clear the vertical dirt wall near the top, it suddenly lost traction, flipped backward in a full rollover, and ended up upside down at the bottom of the slope.